deneme, ses prova, ses kontrol. Ses deneme, ses.
Saygıdeğer katılımcılarımız, etkinliğimize tekrardan hoş geldiniz. Değerlendirme referans grubu toplantılarımız burada sona ermiştir. Bu 2 günün değerlendirmesini yapmak ve sonuç ve çıktıları paylaşmak adına takım liderimiz Sayın Liliana Lucasiu'yu sahneye davet ediyorum.
Many thanks for coming back today. The discussions in the RG meetings were very rich and extensive. Therefore, we are, again, a bit rescheduling. I'm using rescheduling to avoid the negative connotation of delay. So we try to catch up and do not go too late to lunch. So now it's 12:15 about. And I plan we close at 1 o'clock and then continue at lunch to discuss. So I will reorganize a bit the plan for the final discussions, final conclusions. And I propose we start with Steve, who will summarize the findings and our learnings from yesterday and today in the RG meetings. Then I will invite you all to share with us the experience of the ERG meetings, mentioning what you find useful or what can be done in a better way. Also, my colleagues, experts, I can share with you how I found the three ERG meetings that I attended. And in the end, Sophie will draw some final conclusions from this experience. In between, I will come with a question related to the dissemination of the evaluation, but I will specify exactly what is about, when is the time. So now, Steve, please, if you could share, we will stay here. I think we will not use because we are all together and because the discussions in the morning, we feel very close one to each other. So what are the conclusions, Steve? Did we learn anything?
I think that's probably the question I'll put out to the participants. I can give you some of my observations. I sat in three actually, two of the ERG groups. So I don't have a complete overview of what was actually said in all of them. But I do have some feedback from, first of all, the sessions that we had yesterday morning. And also as well, maybe a couple of insights of my own based on the discussions that I've been involved in over the last day and a half or so. When I've finished, and it'll only take me about, I always say this, but about 5 minutes, I think maybe we can then open it up and see what you think of this whole evaluation experience. So I think the first insight would be that these evaluations have clearly been, certainly for many of the IPA stakeholders, so the ministries and the agencies that are involved, not for the NIPAC, but not for the delegation, but for many of you, this has been a new experience. And I was really struck by a comment that was made in the group that I was in yesterday, where they said that somebody said that they thought this evaluation was going to be quite scary, because they didn't really know what it was, because they'd not experienced an evaluation really before. When they actually participated once they got into it, they realized that in fact it's quite similar to ROM, and more or less everybody knows what ROM is. Yeah. So I think that if there's something that's been beneficial from this evaluation, it's maybe that this process is that it's not as scary as you might imagine it to be. However, so it's not an audit to speak of. It's a bit different to ROM. And what you end up with at the end is a report which doesn't look like a ROM report. So I think that maybe this has been an opportunity to kind of raise awareness amongst participants out there that actually of what evaluation is and what it involves. I think the second thing that came out of the discussions that I've seen is that evaluation has quite a significant resource implication. And that's a jargon word, but it basically means that it actually takes quite a lot of your time. Yeah. It requires you to answer emails, it requires you to organize yourselves. Sometimes you might have to deal with the evaluators who will ask you for contacts and so on and so forth. You have to participate in the evaluation meetings, interviews, then you have to read the reports, and then you have to comment on them. And then you have to come to conferences like this and attend them and spend an hour, a day and a half listening to people like me. So it actually takes up quite a lot of time. So actually, if you're going to spend that amount of time being part of the evaluation experience, let's call it that, yeah, then I think then there has to be, I guess, a clear benefit for you as the participants of being in that process, of being involved in the evaluation. Certainly the message that, again, a couple of comments which I picked up on was that, first of all, is that, evaluation is a bit of a burden. It takes up quite a lot of time. but that we had to do it. Yeah, so we did it. So I think this idea is that it's perhaps perceived as an obligation at the moment. You don't really have a choice about being involved in it. And maybe you're not that excited about it just yet. But hopefully, this process will have prepared you for the experience again, should it happen. And it maybe won't be so intimidating or time-consuming, or you'll have a better idea of how you can organize yourself so that you don't have to spend so much time working on it. But I think I'll come back to the point which I've just made then, which is was it worth it? And I think that is the challenge for us, the evaluators. Yeah, we have to make sure that what you get at the end of it is something that's, you know, added value. Was it worth you actually going through all of this? I think this question was asked in the sessions yesterday morning. At least I asked it. I know a couple of my colleagues also asked it. I think there was some. So I would say there were a couple of positive points and a few negative comments about the added value of this process. I think, so one was that it allowed the participants to look at their work, usually their projects, in something other than the activities that they're actually delivering. It kind of pushed them a little bit away from the cold face of working so closely with the projects on a day-to-day basis, and made them think a little bit broader. So, okay, is this going to actually give something which might actually look like this mystical outcome, this change that we talk about all the time? So I think that seems to be an added value. And the second thing is that maybe it's also helped the participants to reflect themselves on how evaluation could mean something to them. Yeah, so it may be something that they could apply in their own work setting. And I heard I've seen a couple of comments along those lines in feedback that we received. And I think maybe hopefully there's more added value there. The negative issues, well, I wouldn't say it's a negative one, but it was a very strong message from the ERG groups that I saw, is that the recommendations that are proposed need to be useful. It's kind of like the recommendations are like the business end of the evaluation. You need to come up with good recommendations. And if the recommendations can be disputed, or if they're not relevant, or the participants think that they're actually not that well based, then that actually generates a bit of a credibility problem for the evaluations themselves. Yeah, and I think that's a message which I think for us as evaluators we need to take forward. Good quality of recommendations are basically, you know, the most important part of any evaluation. So that was something which I think, you know, was a concern that was voiced in some of the groups. If we're going to go through all of this work, then we want to at least end up with recommendations that we can use. Yeah. Just a couple of points on the discussions that we had about these notions of evaluation methods and intervention logics. It was pretty obvious from the group I was in and the discussions I've had with my colleagues that, you know, there was not a great deal of understanding of what an evaluation method really was. And you know what, maybe you don't need to think about it too much as IPA participants or beneficiaries. You can leave all that complicated stuff to us, yeah, and you can get on with delivering your projects. And from time to time, we'll come in and ask you questions like, you know, what was the best way to do things? Okay, well, yeah, we like focus groups. Focus groups seem to be a better way to work, yeah. So I think that was a clear message. The issue of intervention logics, likewise, I don't think people understood the notion of intervention logics in the context of an evaluation, but they definitely understood that its relationship, the importance of intervention logics to their projects. And it was a very nice point made, which is that, and I've picked up on this from a few of you, which is that we know that it takes time to get an IPA project operational, moving it from the moment when the first idea came to actually it starting to be implemented. Yeah, and that process actually does affect the intervention logic. Its relevance is what we thought, is that path that we were thinking about 5 years ago in some cases maybe? Is that path still valid? Is this the way that we want to go? So this issue of intervention logics is still there in your daily work. It doesn't really relate to evaluations as such, but it's still there, and it's definitely something which, you know, I think I made the point in my presentation yesterday, is that it's a theoretical construct. It's not the reality. Yeah. So if the reality's changed, then you can also change your intervention logic, you know, as long as it remains logical and it still gives you something that you want at the end of it. Rooms for improvement, I would say my last few bullet points. Picked up on feedback related to the commenting process of the evaluations. It seems as though some of you have seen the reports, some of you have not seen the reports, some of you have been able to comment, and some of you have not been able to comment. Some of the comments have been sent, but maybe not passed on. So there's certainly there's a lot of uncertainty about what happens next. You've seen the reports, but what happens? Not all of you have seen the reports, but what happens next? And I think that's a message definitely for us as the evaluators that we need to take forward, thinking about how we can actually structure that process, that interaction between the evaluation process, the evaluators, and you as the recipients of the report. So I think the commenting process is definitely something we can look at. In regard to a couple of other points, I mentioned about evaluation methods. There's definitely an impression that field visits, focus groups, group interviewing was definitely something which you felt was a good way to actually gather information. So much more useful and interactive way for you to work with the evaluators. And I think that's something that we could definitely make more use of. Although, of course, the circumstances in which the evaluations took place were pretty challenging because of the COVID situation. Yeah, and I think that's probably it. I mean, but I think the next question, I don't know whether we've got any time, Liliana, do we have time to let people give some feedback? Yeah, it would be useful just, I think, you know, the question of, you know, room for improvement or things that you would like to change from the evaluation process based on your experiences. Is there anything that you would like to contribute or tell us? You know, because, you know, we don't really, we're not, you know, it's good. We've got you all here now. We might as well take the opportunity to find that. So can you give us some feedback? Or was it so good that you've just got nothing else to say? Or did I capture everything in what I've just said? Don't be shy.
I would reinforce the invitation of Steve. So we explained to you many things about how we are doing things, how we did in this evaluation. We did together the ERG meetings today, and we would be grateful if you could share with us what you think that we can improve in evaluations from our side, from the evaluators, or together. So how did you see the discussions, the way we did things? Of course, there is never a perfect process. In the civil society ERG meeting, we had technical problems at the beginning, despite we tested before. But it is not about this. It is about the content of the evaluation. So if you could share with us what you thought, and or the ERG members and also my colleagues could bring here in the discussion your perceptions, I think would be very useful for us all. Is anyone who would like to share? I have something. Okay, I will start with some impressions, hot impressions. So for us, it's very useful, the discussion. Maybe we spent too much time in the ERG meetings presenting the findings because we want to have a basis on which to discuss. Maybe we should shorten this. This is possible when the report was distributed in advance and you had time to go through it. So this is an improvement that we can do. What is very valuable for us is how you perceive what we have written, because we write from the inside. So we are biased So your first feedback as ERG members is very valuable because it's from outside, how you perceive the words. You know that one word can change the understanding of a message. Then we have another challenge. We are always asked to write in a concise manner because people do not read. And we are aware that the summaries are read most of the time, not always. Sometimes only the conclusions and the recommendations in the summaries. Of course, the summaries will be refined in the end, but this first feedback for us and how you perceive is a great help to have in the end. It's not that you influence us, that we change our opinions. We might change if we don't have the evidence or the evidence is wrong. Sometimes we have not explored something sufficiently. So we agree that mainly for very complex interventions, we need this feedback from and this is the reason the RGs were created. So personally, I found very useful discussions, and maybe to extend more time, the time would be more beneficial for us. But the compromise is that we get the ideas and we continue and we contact you individually so that we don't waste the time of everybody. So thank you very much for these contributions in the RG meetings. We are not happy when you do not have a feedback, even if it is first of all, and from my whole experience, I can say that many times when I receive a comment to the evaluation, I tend to say first, he's not or she's not right, because it's my selfish approach that I do right. But in most of the cases, maybe 99%, I learned something from that comment. So we must be open to comments, even if we do not understand them from the very beginning, or in the end, maybe they do not apply, but we learn from them. So please give us comments. We will not be, sometimes we get scared, those less experienced, but please give us comments and criticism if you want to say, but it is not about criticism in the end. So any other opinion from my colleagues maybe, because they are more, Roland, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liliana. I think the points that you made and the points that Steve made before that are very much true also for the discussions for themes 7, 8, and 9. Today we had a very, very good discussion. One thing that came out very clearly is that we need to work hard on the recommendations so that they are really practical. Also that they are not only at a sort of more general level of relevance to perhaps the wider theme, but also look specifically at the different projects and see whether we can have any more operational recommendations at the level of the actions that were supported and that we looked at and where we developed great familiarity with. So that's a task for us. Otherwise, perhaps just another comment on, I think that is also, Steve, I think you also spoke about this, in terms of transparency of the commenting process. Very important that we all know what the different parties said about the report, especially for me for Seville and myself in the case of theme 8 and 9, and for Hülya and myself for theme 7. It's of course a challenge if we're sort of like in the middle and we have seen comments from different parties, but they have not seen the comments of each other. So I think that's another thing that we need to work on to make sure everybody is aware of what people are thinking about the report. The evaluation reference groups were a great forum for starting that, but I think that's something that also needs to be perhaps established as a standard process. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Before going to the final conclusions for the whole event, I would like to share with you a few plans about the dissemination of the evaluation. We have a specific component, dissemination of the evaluation. And this is complementary to the visibility which is made at project level or any other channel. We have here Ibrahim Yannick. He is our colleague communication expert, and we are extracting, we are filtering the messages to different stakeholders, including the public. In the expert panels, we had these meetings with sector experts. In some sectors, they specifically said that despite there is a good visibility of the project, an awareness of the public regarding the EU assistance and the outcomes, the contribution of the projects to specific objectives, sector objectives, is not sufficiently made. So we could contribute with the evaluation. So I would propose you now to do a quick exercise, a brainstorming. If you could reflect 1-2 minutes, what would be the message that you would like to send to the stakeholders of your intervention, and could be linked to the findings and the conclusions of this evaluation? Is there anything that you think the public should know about the evaluation results regarding your intervention? So let's reflect, and if anyone has any idea, we will record it, and if there are not sufficient, we will come back to you to do this dissemination effectively. So, what are the messages that you would like to send to the public or specific stakeholders in the country regarding your interventions? We reflect in silence. We can also exercise it. We have.
Sesim duyuluyor, evet. Öncelikle bu konferans için tüm emek verenlere çok teşekkür ediyorum. Belki sorumuzun tam cevabı değil ama biraz önce söz almak istedim. O yüzden dile getireceğim, bir katkıda bulunmak isteyeceğim. Şöyle, bu değerlendirme konferansı ve değerlendirme çalışmaları için hani bir önerim var. Öncesinde siz de dile getirdiniz zaten. Değerlendirme raporunun özetle bir üstünden geçip tekrar bize hatırlatmak. Uzun zaman oldu çünkü bir bilgi vermek öncesinde güzel olabilirdi diye düşünüyorum. İkincisi de benim için çok önemli bir husus. Bizlerle değerlendirme aşamasında da iyi uygulama örnekleri, best practices, bunları görmek isteriz. Sizlerden bunları öğrenmek isteriz. Bize bu temin edilirse gerçekten bizim için de ufuk açıcı olacak. Bu hem yerel bazda hem de diğer proje yürüten ülkelerin de uygulamaları açısından iyi uygulama örnekleri bizlerle değerlendirme çalışmaları kapsamında, bu gerek konferanslar gerek interview görüşmelerde yapılabilir. Bizimle paylaşılırsa bunun bize fayda sağlayacağını düşünüyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much. Any other ideas? If you will have in the next weeks ideas for these messages, we kindly ask you to contact us. You have our contacts, so maybe Ibrahim will contact the RG members again to consult you for what we are extracting. We get closer to the end of this session. We still have 20 minutes, and now let's look on the overall event yesterday and today, and extract the takeaways, what we take home, and first impressions now from the group. What would be the lessons that we take home from the 2 days. What would be some examples of useful things, something useful that you could take from these events? Of course, we will share the theme in the end.
Merhabalar, Başar ben, AB Başkanlığından. Belki bugün aklımızda kalması gereken bir husus, her projenin aslında belirli bir sektör içerisinde olduğunu aklımızda tutmamız olabilir. Herkes kendi projesiyle ilgileniyor, çok güzel çıktılar elde ediliyor. Bakanlıklar da bu çıktıları çok iyi bir şekilde takip ediyorlar ama her proje aynı zamanda belirli bir sektörün altında ve projeler arasındaki irtibatı ve projelerin sektöre genel katkıları bu tip değerlendirmelerle ortaya çıkıyor. Bu değerlendirmeden de özellikle outcome ve impact level indikatörlere dikkat etmek ve diğer projelerin başka projelerle, kendi alanda ve başka alanlardaki diğer projelerle olan ilişkilerini proje bittikten sonra da sürdürmek önemli olduğunu söyleyebilirim. Sağ olun.
Thank you very much. Any other ideas to share? Please.
Merhabalar, Berna Bayar. Avrupa Birliği Başkanlığı'nda uzman yardımcısı olarak çalışıyorum. Ben de Avrupa Birliği Başkanlığı'na 1,5 senedir çalışıyorum. Benim için dünkü tarım sektöründeki tartışmalar yeni çalışma grubunda yer almaya başladığım alanda önceki deneyimleri görmek amacıyla 2014'te yapılmış bir projenin impact'ini çeşitli bakış açılarıyla ne derece yeterli olup olmadığını anlamak açısından önemli oldu. Bugün kendimin çok da çalışma fırsatı bulamadığım yargı ve sivil toplum sektörlerinde yer almak da bazı sonuçları görmek, etkileri görmek açısından önemli oldu. Mesela yargı sektöründe yapılmış bir projenin daha yenice eğitici hakimler alanında çıkan bir yasayla bir anlamda meyvesini görmek, örneğini duymak benim için çok sevindirici oldu. Sivil toplum sektöründe ise Jean Monnet çok uzun süredir devam eden bir proje. Onunla ilgili bu kadar yıldır devam etmesine rağmen hem etkisinin sonuçlandırılmasını görmek hem de halen eksik kalan yerleri anlamak açısından faydalı oldu. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Other contributions?
Merhabalar. Ben şöyle bir şey ekleyebilirim. Hani bu süreç aylardır, yani neredeyse bir yılını tamamlamış, hani tamamlayacak bir süreç. Bu süreçte raporlar geldi. Bu raporlar hem lider kurumlarla paylaşıldı, işte kurulan değerlendirme gruplarıyla paylaşıldı, yorumlar alındı, online toplantılar yapıldı vesaire. Ama ben dün ve bugünkü toplantıların verimi kadar daha önce hiçbir verim yaşamadığımızı düşünüyorum. Çünkü yüz yüze insanların konuşması, kendi fikirlerini anlatması ve direkt olarak hem lider kurumlar, hem yararlanıcılar, hem delegasyon, hem AB Başkanlığı, hem takımın karşı karşıya doğrudan fikir paylaşabilmesi bence hem çıkacak hani raporların final halinin oluşmasında hem de önümüzdeki değerlendirme süreçlerinde çok yönlendirici bir şey oldu. Yani mail trafiğinde ister istemez işte bir kurum kendi görüşlerini gönderiyor, işte başka bir kurum kendi görüşlerini gönderiyor ama karşılıklı olarak görüşlerin tartışılmış olması, işte karşılıklı herkes bir konuda görüşlerini ifade edebilmiş olması bence çok verimli ve sağlıklı bir şey oldu. Ben dün tarım sektörünün toplantısındaydım. Bugün de kendi alanım sivil toplumun toplantısındaydım. İkisinde de benim gözlemlediğim yani ortaya yani şu ana kadar çıkmış olan raporların tamamlanacak olmasında çok büyük etki yarattı bu toplantılar. Direkt olarak herkes, her kurum diğer kurumların fikrini birebir görmüş oldu, yorum yapabilmiş oldu. Sizler takım olarak bunları not alıp değerlendirmeye alacaksınız. Onun için bence çok yani önümüzdeki değerlendirme süreçlerinde de başka projelerde, başka etkinliklerde de nasıl bir yol izlenmesi gerektiğini bence çok net bir şekilde gözlemlemiş olduk. Bunun için hem bütün emeği geçmiş lider kurumlar, yararlanıcılar, burada olan insanlar, bütün bu süreçteki herkese teşekkür etmek lazım. Ben bunları söyleyeceğim sadece şimdilik. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Burakcan. I will add something. We learned that physical presence is useful. But still, to allow access to people who cannot come to the place, the hybrid solution will be ideal. And technically, we have to prepare. We had in many of the reports this question if the interaction, the training, or any other event transferred into online was effective. In general, we believe that when you do the switch under the pressure of time, you are not sufficiently prepared to take the new solution, the online solution, to the highest level of effectiveness. But under the pressure of the pandemics, we are more prepared, or at least aware that we have to make things, these systems, hybrid systems, work very well, and that we get used, each of us, how to use them better. So for the ERG meetings, I think we'll apply this hybrid option. This is a takeaway, to consider hybrid option in the future. Other comments?
I was wondering how you're going to disseminate the results, and I was wondering how you're going to share your findings with the hierarchy, because here at this level, I mean, we're people implementing projects, following up projects, but how is this going to be presented to the higher management, the decision takers, so that they could actually, some of your recommendations at least could translate into policy change? Thank you.
Our dissemination plan foresees different levels of providing the evaluation results, customized. The evaluation reports, the 9 evaluation reports, are more methodological or scientific, we can say. So they have details which build credibility on the results. Because they are not so easy to be read by the busy persons or by the public, we proposed in our plan, in addition to what we were required, to prepare a synthesis report, which will be in a more communication style, using infographics and key messages. There we will have a filter of the conclusions and recommendations. So there will be conclusions, because we intend to limit it to 20 pages, so that it is somehow a summary of the summaries. From this synthesis report, we will extract messages, and they will be disseminated through a range of communication channels, and we have a plan. More than that, we have connected with DUA communication systems, so we we do not create additional channels, but we use what is existing, and we will disseminate we will send these messages. We have the final conference, which will be a big event in September, and its visibility will facilitate also reach of the messages to the large public. Regarding the high-level decision makers, here we don't have our plan because we don't interact directly with them, but we discuss with our beneficiary, with NIPAC, the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit, and we are available to contribute with very specific materials, documents, when they need and when they find appropriate. One of these initial steps was already in the, during the implementation, where the presentation in the sector monitoring committees. However, it was an early stage because we didn't have the final report, but for sure this can be multiplied when we have the reports approved and the messages fully agreed to be sent to all the stakeholders. But if you have any other suggestion, we are very open, but this is the plan. It is well structured and with a logic regarding the different audiences. If there are other questions, if not, I ask my colleagues if any of them would like to share a takeaway. If not, I would invite Sophie and for the final conclusions. Okay, no presentation. We have enough presentations, please.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. So actually, I had prepared a little presentation based on the discussions that were held yesterday during the working group on innovative evaluation and intervention logic. But I think that you have had enough of presentations. And also, a lot of the things have already been said. So I will limit myself to a couple of conclusive words. And I think that the word is about learning. We wanted this event to be an interactive learning experience. And I hope that we have achieved this objective, because we have been indeed sitting together, exchanging and discussing about the difference between opinion and perceptions, and we have seen the difference. We said yesterday that evaluation was about evidence-based assessment, but even evidence can be different from different perspectives. And this is what we wanted to capture with the ERG working groups, and I think that from what I heard, it has been done. So where do we want to go from here? We said it, now it's our job to make sure that the recommendations are as useful and actionable as possible for you. We will, of course, take into account what has been discussed and shown during the ERG working groups. Then you will also share your comments in a more formal way, and we will have the time to make sure that everything is grasped and in a correct way, so that you have a tool to go forward. The other thing, of course, is about sharing. You mentioned it, and we have a sharing plan, because evaluation is not only about the recommendation, it's also about sharing, disseminating. And the last thing, the last word, is the word that has been used the most during this day, and is also on the title of the conference. It's about learning. We should not stop learning. And evaluation is about learning. It's a mutual learning. It's not that you are teaching us something, but it is between this interaction that new knowledge is appearing. And yesterday during my presentation, I talked about MERL, you know, the Monitoring, Evaluation, Research and Learning System. And this L should be written bigger than all the other letters, because this is what will remain. And you are building your MERL system. When we go, all of this knowledge, all of the findings, you will have to take them and to do something and to morph them into something else in the new programs, in the new design, and in new ideas that you will develop in the future, I hope. That's my conclusive word, and I'd like also to thank all of you for these fantastic contributions and constructive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we appear that we put more intensity and focus on this evaluation, on these evaluation methods and approaches. Please consider that it's a professional deviation. We love this job, and this is why you should trust that we are willing to do a good job. And now, before going to lunch, let's see where we started yesterday. We started with this Mentimeter, and now maybe we can have a look at the results. Yesterday they were not stable. So yesterday when we started, the evaluation meant for us assessment, sustainability, lessons, recommendations, learning. And in these discussions today, I think these were the main words in the conclusions related to the RG meetings. Recommendations are the most important, but also the assessment that looks behind. Sustainability is linked with the change on the longer-term impact. Also yesterday, in the second quiz, we considered that interviews, field visits are the most, are mostly used, and we can go to the Q2 Mentimeter. Okay, we go to the next one, the 880. Okay, we have time to look more. Efficiency was there as well. Good things are done with patience. So most of the time we don't have sufficient patience and we get angry with everything is happening in our life. But we can recall that after the first discussions, which was the most frequent reaction or attitude towards evaluation? Do you remember what was the highest ranked approach to involvement in evaluation? I think that we will be more involved. It was that we continue learning. This is with the future methods we have. So we will have a more intense use of the methods. None of them is expected to decrease, even the surveys that are more and more difficult. In my personal opinion, we will use less the surveys, and this is because the statistical and administrative data will increase the possibility to measure changes and also processes. So this is the overall view that we will ask you more and more for interviews. And the next one, what we take with us. So more focus on evaluation results and implementation. That means that we look how the results will be transferred into implementation. Then it's on its second ranked, continue to learn, and in general, more involvement. Also, some of us will use more focus on sophisticated methods, but this is normal because not in any intervention sophisticated methods could be applied. And the statistical administrative data here, we depend on development of the administrative data. So we would like to use more, but we depend on their evolution. And we still have a bit of lack of trust, which I totally agree that we do not consider sufficiently reliable all the time the conclusions. And I think this is good questioning. Are you sure that the evidences are strong? We do this in our quality control, at the quality control level. We have a quality controller who is checking, do we have sufficient evidence for this conclusion? So we all have to do, because it's in a constructive manner. So I hope I didn't exceed 1 o'clock, which I intended to have as a time limit. And we invite you to lunch, and there I really hope we can discuss in an informal way and continue socializing. We thank you very much for the effort. We know that you left your workplace with a lot of tasks postponed for Monday, but we wish you to be very productive and catch up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Instructions for lunch.
Değerli misafirlerimiz, yemeğimiz -1. katta olacaktır. Çok teşekkür ederiz katılımlarınız için.